Okay, what's up? We're going to be doing Eusebius today, Bishop of Caesarea. That's Antiquity Unveiled, page 141. That's Eusebius. Let me spell that. Eusebius. And he was Bishop of Caesarea, and that's Caesarea. And here is his spirit testimony. I yield under protest. I hate both my mortal and spirit life. I acted here and still do act a living lie. The prince of interpolators, forgers, and plagiarists now inhabits the organism of this man before you. Curse you and your book, but I will have, I suppose, to get my name in it. I have fought these spirit powers during 2 long years before they got to me here tonight. I am fast in the net of truth. I am not, quotes, bad though I be, unquote, the forger of the passage in relation to Jesus Christ in Josephus. I merely copied it. Justin Martyr was the man who did that in his epistle to Antonius Pius, begging that he would not persecute the Christians on account of the similarity of the Christian with the pagan god. In chapter 2 of my ecclesiastical history, you will find the sentence, as near as I can give it through this man, parentheses, curse me if I was not watched, I would lie to you, end of parentheses, that the Epistles and Gospels of the ancient Therapeutae, Therapeutae, are the Epistles and Gospels of the present day. And another thing I was compelled to say in my history was that the gospel of Jesus Christ was neither new nor strange. There is a book extant that will settle this ante-Nicene library question, and what it is and where to find it will be told here tonight by a spirit who will follow me. There is no bishop, archbishop, cardinal, nor pope that has not tampered with everything that could not throw light upon Christianity. It has its origins with and was founded by Apollonius of Tyana, and its principal exponent, or one who did most to spread it, according to the manuscripts that I copied from, was Ammonius Saccas. I think from my reading of them that he added the Egyptian, Alexandrian element to the Hindu originals. That is, he modernized them to suit the Egyptian schools of thought. All the epistles and gospels are, in reality, the creation of the Christian priests. Some were named as early as the 2nd century, and some not until the 4th century. Quotes or brackets, here the Spirit stopped to say, in the first place, I hate to give this communication. Brackets, he was urged to do it without reluctance, he answered, end of brackets. It is a surrender of power. No man likes to give up power. Brackets, he then resumed his communication. All the Gospels and epistles of Apollonius of Tyana were in what might be termed the Syriac, Hebraic, or Samaritan tongue, and the Greek writers translated them in those early ages to suit themselves. That Christianity and paganism were identically the same can be proven very easily by the feast in honor of Adonis or Adonai, which the Christians adopted, that is, the Catholic Christians, and which is now their Easter festival. And you can see this at Rome on any Easter day. It requires very little learning to see their identity. The original, parentheses, if ever there was an original, end of parentheses, Jesus Christ was a Hindu god, known under the name of Christos or Krishna, the modern way of spelling it to disguise the real truth. According to documents that were extant in my day, this Christos or Krishna was worshipped in the temple of Mathura or Jumna in the days of Sanchoniathon, Sanchoniathon, 1200 years BC, positive evidence of which I think is to be found in some manuscripts of the time of Alexander the Great, still extant, 330 BC. I do not come here tonight to confess anything willingly. I am caught in the web of circumstances, trapped by spirits who know more than I do. I have confessed only what their power made me confess. I have had to do it. You know my name. Brackets. We replied, Eusebius of Caesarea. And he replied, I am Eusebius of Caesarea. But to me, this is the worst experience I have ever had to undergo. I would rather have spent 100 years in hell than to have acknowledged what I have done here. And that ends the spirit testimony of Eusebius. So here are some comments. At our request, the Spirit consented to allow us to make an appeal to him to reconsider his past life as a necessary step to his own happiness, as well as an act of justice to the thousands of millions of spirits who have been kept in darkness, ignorance, and misery, mainly through his dishonest and untruthful incalculations. He heard us with attention and patience, and in leaving the control, promised to weigh well what we had said to him, and to return and make known the result. In view of the great importance of that communication, we will give such facts concerning Eusebius as will serve to give it its due weight. Of Eusebius, Dr. Lardner says, and he quotes Dr. Lardner, Eusebius, Bishop of Caesarea in Palestine, says Jerome, a man most studious in the divine scriptures, and together with the martyr Pamphilus, very diligent in making a large collection of ecclesiastical writers, published innumerable volumes, some of which are these: the Evangelical Demonstration in 20 books, the Evangelical Preparation in 15 books, 5 books of Theophany, Theophanie, 10 books of ecclesiastical history, chronicle canons of universal history, and an epitome of them, and of the difference between the Gospels, 10 books upon Isaiah, against Porphyry, who at the same time wrote in Sicily, 30 books that some think, though I have never met with more than 20, topics in 1 book, an Apology of Origen in 6 books, the Life of Pamphilus in 3 books, several small pieces concerning the martyrs, most learned commentaries on the 150 Psalms, and many other works. He flourished chiefly under the emperors Constantine and Constantinus. On account of his friendship for Pamphilus, he received his surname from him. Eusebius, as is generally thought, and with some degree of probability, was born at Caesarea in Palestine about the year 270, or as some think sooner. We have no account of his parents, or who were his instructors in early life, nor is there anything certainly known of his family and relations. It is somewhat probable, though not certain, that Eusebius was ordained presbyter by Agapus, Agapius, Bishop of Caesarea, of whom he made a very honorable mention. He had a long and very happy intimacy with Pamphilus. Been saying that, but it's spelled Pamphilus, presbyter in that church, who was imprisoned in the year 307 and obtained the crown of martyrdom in 309. During the time of that imprisonment, Eusebius was much with his friend. After martyrdom of Pamphilus, he went into Tyre, where he saw many finish their testimony to Jesus in a glorious manner. From thence, as it seems, he went into Egypt, where, 2. He was the spectator of the offerings and patience of many of his fellow Christians, where likewise he seems to have been imprisoned, and because he did not suffer, as some others did, it has been insinuated that he procured his liberty by sacrificing, or some other mean copulence, unbecoming a Christian. But that is a general accusation without ground. No one was ever able to specify any mean act of compliance in particular, as appears from Potamon's charge in Epiphanes, Epiphanius. Agapus succeeded in Theotechnus, Theotecnus, in the see of Caesarea. I think that's a misprint, in the see, S-E-E, of Caesarea. And it is the more general opinion that Eusebius succeeded Agapus in 315. This is certain, that he was bishop of Caesarea in 320 at the latest, after which we can perceive that he was present at most of the synods held in that part of the world. He died in the year 339 or 340. Speaking of Eusebius's ecclesiastical history, Lardner says, "Of all Eusebius's works, the ecclesiastical history is the most valuable, but, as it seems to me the least accurate of all his large works that are come down to us in any good measure entire. Some faults may be owing to haste, others to defect of critical skill, others to want of candor or impartiality. For our great author, as well as most other men, had his affections. He was favorable to some things and persons, and prejudiced against others. He was a great admirer of Origen, or Origen, Origen, in which he was the right. Nevertheless, he should not have, therefore, omitted all notice of Methodus, Methodus, because he was Origen's adversary. He had a great zeal for the Christian religion, and, so far, undoubtedly, he was right. Nevertheless, he should have not attempted to support it by weak and false arguments. Abgarus's letter to our Savior, and our Savior's letter to Abgarus, copied at length in our author's ecclesiastical history, are much suspected by many learned men not to be genuine. It is wonderful that Eusebius should think Philo's Therapeutae, Therapeutae, were Christians, and that their ancient writings should be our Gospels and Epistles. Page 55d. Eusebius supposed Josephus to speak on the enrollment at the time of our Lord's nativity before the death of Herod the Great, related Luke 2, 1-4. Whereas, indeed, the Jewish historian speaks of that made after the removal of Archelaus, Archelaus, which is also referred to in Acts 5:37. Our author does justly allege Josephus as confirming the account which Luke gives, Acts 12, of the death of Herod Agrippa. But whereas Josephus says that Agrippa, casting his eyes upward, saw an owl sitting upon a cord over his head, our ecclesiastical historian says he saw an angel over his head. I know not what good apology can be made for this. He transcribes Josephus's account of Thaddeus as confirming what is said, Acts 5:36, whereas what Josephus says is reckoned to be a considerable objection against evangelical history. And these are numbered as I'm going down. This one's 8. In the demonstration, he transcribes a passage of Josephus relating to the wonderful signs preceding the destruction of Jerusalem, and then adds, "These things he writes as happening after our Savior's passion, though they did not happen till about 30 years afterward. to the like purpose in the Chronicle and in the ecclesiastical history, Eusebius transcribes largely that passage of Josephus as giving an account of the signs before the Jewish war. Concerning this matter may be seen Joseph Scaliger, Scaliger. 9. If the testimony to Jesus as the Christ had been from the beginning in Josephus's works, it is strange that it should never have been quoted by any ancient apologist for Christianity, and now in the beginning of the 4th century be thought so important as to be quoted by our author in 2 of his works still remaining. 10. There is a work ascribed to Porphyry, quoted by Eusebius, in the preparation and demonstration. If that work is not genuine, as I think it is not, it was a forgery of his own time, and then quoting it, as he does, will be reckoned an instance of want of care, or skill, or candor, and impartiality. 11. I formerly complained of Eusebius for not giving us at length the passage of Caius, C-A-I-U-S, concerning the scriptures of the New Testament, or, however, of St. Paul's epistles. But he abridges that, and afterwards transcribes at length several passages of an anonymous writer of little worth concerning the followers of Artemon, A-R-T-E-M-O-N. It may be reckoned somewhat probable that Eusebius's aversion for Sabellianism, S-A-B-E-L-L-I-A-N-I-S-M, and everything akin to it, led him to pay so much respect for that author. 12. I add no more at present. Many observations upon this author's works may be seen in Josephus Scaliger's Prolegomena to the Chronicle. Dr. Heumann, Heumann, intended to write remarks upon the ecclesiastical history, but I do not know that he published them. So wrote the learned and pious Dr. Nathaniel Lardner concerning the famed ecclesiastical history of Eusebius. From what follows, it will be seen he was equally dishonest and evasive as to the doctrinal views he entertained. Says Dr. Lardner, quote, it has often been disputed whether Eusebius was an Arian. It may be proper, therefore, for me to refer to some authors upon this question. The ancients were not all of one mind here. Socrates, in the 5th century, inserted an apology for him in his ecclesiastical history. Quotes, among moderns, it is needless to mention Baronius, whose antipathy to this writer is well known. Petavius, P-E-T-A-V-I-U-S, readily places Eusebius amongst Arians. Bull vindicates him. Cave and Lee Clerk had a warm controversy upon his head. Cave allows, quotes, that there are many unwary and dangerous expressions to be found in his writings, that he has at best doubtful and ambiguous expressions in his converted doctrine, and that he was reckoned to be an Arian by Athanasius, Athanasius, and divers others his contemporaries, as well as others in the latter part of the 4th century and afterwards. Still he says he did not hold the peculiar doctrines of Arianism. Fabricius and Dupin do not much differ from Cave. Valesius, too, was favorable to our author. G.J. Vossius says, his works would sufficiently manifest him to have been an Arian if the ancients had been silent about him. Of the same opinion was James Gothfred Tilleman. It is clear that Eusebius showed himself an Arian by his actions and his writings. Montefalcon says the same thing exactly and earnestly, and at large argues of this side of much of the question, and that he showed himself to be an Arian as much in his writings after the Council of Nicaea as before it. As for his subscribing to the Nicene Creed, he supposes that Eusebius was moved by worldly considerations and that he did not subscribe sincerely, which is grievous to think. Better had it had been that the bishops of that council had never met together, than that they should have tempted and prevailed upon a Christian bishop or anyone else to prevaricate, prevaricate, and act against conscience. Such is the testimony of the Christian writers as to the dishonesty, worldliness, and unfairness of Eusebius as a writer and Christian bishop. We quote farther from Smith's Dictionary of Greek and Roman Biography. The character of Eusebius and his honesty as a writer have been made the subject of a fierce attack by Gibbons, who accuses him of relating whatever might redound to the credit and suppressing whatever would tend to cast reproach on his Christianity, and represents him as little better than a dishonest psychopath, anxious for nothing higher than the favor of Constantine, and resumes the subject in his vindication of the 15th and 16th chapters of the history. For the charge of psychopathy there is but little foundation. The joy of the Christians at Constantine's patronage of true religion was so great that he was all but deified by them, both before and after his death. And although no doubt Niebuhr, Niebuhr, has sufficiently shown that Constantine, at least up to the time of his last illness, can only be considered as a pagan, yet, considering that his accession not only terminated the persecution which had raged for 10 years, but even established Christianity as the state religion, it is not surprising that Eusebius, like others, should be willing to overlook his faults and regard him as an especial favorite of heaven. As to the charge of dishonesty, though we would neither expect nor wish a Christian to be impartial in Gibbons' sense, brackets, why not, pray, question mark, and the brackets, yet Eusebius has certainly avowed that he omits almost all account of the wickedness and dissensions of the Christians, from thinking such stories less edifying than those which displayed the excellence of religion, by reflecting honor upon the martyrs. The fact that he avows this principle at once diminishes our confidence in him as a historian, and acquits him of the charge of intentional deceit, to which he would have been otherwise exposed. But besides this, Eusebius has written a chapter bearing the monstrous title, How Far It May Be Lawful and Fitting to Use Falsehood as a Medicine for the Advantage of Those Who Require Such a Method. I'll say the title of Eusebius's work again. How far it may be lawful and fitting to use falsehood as medicine for the advantage of those who require such a method. It's not funny, but it's funny. Now, at the first sight, brackets, and why not second, third, fourth, and any number of other sights, there naturally rises in our minds a strong prejudice against a person who, being a Christian in profession, could suppose that the use of falsehood can ever be justified, and no doubt the thought was suggested by the pious frauds which are the sham of the early church. But when we read the chapter itself, we find that the instances which Eusebius takes of the extent to which the principle may be carried are the cases in which God is described in the Old Testament as liable to human affections, as jealousy or anger, which is done for the advantage of those who require such methods. We have given enough, and more than enough, concerning Eusebius to show his real character. We may now proceed to analyze the communication, which purports to come from his unwilling and resisting spirit. That this captured spirit should hate to face his work as immortal and spirit with such a record of evil-doing was natural, and that he should make his confession under protest ought to surprise no one. To realize that he had lived and was still living a lie was anything but a pleasant necessity. That he should curse ourself and our contemplated publication was equally natural, and not less so his fear that his unwilling and truthful spirit testimony would be made known to the world. Some idea of the kind of psychological warfare going on in spirit life may be gathered from the fact that after 2 years of effort, this stubborn and powerful spirit was compelled to yield to a higher psychological force and become a passive witness to the truth. We desire to direct the attention of our readers to the disavowal of the Spirit, that he forged the passage in relation to Jesus Christ in Josephus's Antiquity of the Jews. It has come to be a general impression among critics that the passage or section referred to of Josephus was forged, as well as interpolated by Eusebius. This the Spirit denies, so far as the forgery goes, which he charges upon Justin Martyr, who used it in his epistles or apology to Antonius Pius. Whether this be true or false, it is a fact that Justin Martyr did write an epistle to the Emperor Antonius Pius, speaking of the undisputed works of Justin Martyr. McClintock and Strong's Cyclopedia says, quotes, Apologia pro upir Christ, it's like French, Christenton pros Antonian ton Eusebe, mentioned in the only 2 known manuscripts of the Apologies, and in the older edition of Justin is one of the most interesting remains of Christian antiquity. It is addressed to the emperors Antonius Pius and to his adopted sons, Verisimus the philosopher, and that's Verrisimus the philosopher, afterwards the emperor Marcus Aurelius, and Lucius the philosopher. Brackets. We follow the common reading, not that of Eusebius. Afterwards, the Emperor Verus, colleague of M. Aurelius. If there was any such language put into the mouth of Josephus by Justin Pius in his letter to Antonius Pius, we cannot trace it. But one thing is very certain, that Eusebius was the first to refer to such a passage in Josephus, and he was no doubt the interpolator of that fraud, if not its author. He, as his spirit, seems to regard this forgery as worse than any he ever committed. So far as the moral guilt is concerned, one pious fraud of that nature is as bad as another, as will be seen in our extracts from Lardner's work. Eusebius did say, quote, that the ancient writings of Philos Therapeutae were our Gospels and Epistles. Not only so, but the spirit of Eusebius comes back and testifies that such was the fact. The statement of the spirit that he was compelled by the facts to state in his history, that the gospel of Jesus Christ was neither new nor strange, is borne out of the following extract from Lardner. Quotes from Lardner. The contents of the 4th chapter of the Ecclesiastical History is to this purpose, that the religion published by Jesus Christ to all nations is neither new nor strange. For though, says he, without controversy, we are but of late, and the name of Christians is indeed new, and has not long obtained over the world, yet our manner of life and the principles of our religion have not been lately devised by us, but were instituted and observed, if I may so say, from the beginning of the world by good men, accepted from God, from those natural notions which are implanted in men's minds, This I shall show in the following manner. It is well known that the nation of the Hebrews is not new, but distinguished by antiquity. They have writings containing accounts of ancient men, few indeed in number, but very eminent for piety, justice, and every other virtue, of whom some lived before the flood, others since, sons and grandsons of Noah, particularly Abraham, whom the Hebrews glory in as the father and founder of their nation. And if anyone, ascending from Abraham to the first man, should affirm that all of them who celebrated for virtue were Christians in reality, though not in name, he would not speak much beside the truth. Now, Eusebius lived and wrote 300 years after the alleged death of Jesus Christ, and yet we have him declaring that the name of Christians was then new, and that their religion and customs were of long antecedent date. Who believes that Eusebius would ever have given such a death blow to the pretense that Jesus Christ had taught or established a new religion, or any religion at all, had he dared to face the facts that contradicted that pretense in his day? Who but the spirit of Eusebius would have recalled those annihilating declarations against Christianity made in his history of the church? He well conjectured that those admissions on his part ought to be utterly fatal to the pretense of the originality of the so-called Christian religion. As will be seen by the communication from the spirit of Sir Thomas Bodley, the fact of the existence of the Ante-Nicene library to which Eusebius refers is fully explained. The testimony of the spirit of Eusebius to the fact that Christianity had its origin with and was founded by Apollonius of Tyana, as expounded by Ammonius Saccas, is not more important than it is true. That Ammonius Saccas should have given them an Alexandrian coloring was to be expected, and this the spirit of Eusebius testifies was the case, when he says the Christian Gospels and Epistles were all the work of priests. We understand him to mean that the titles they bear and their present modified forms are the work of Christian priests. Equally important and truthful is the declaration of this spirit that the Gospels and Epistles of Apollonius of Tyana were in the Syriac, Hebraic, or Samaritan tongue, and were subsequently translated into Greek by translators who construed them to suit themselves. The Spirit testifies truly when he said that Christianity and paganism were identical, and that the Christian Easter festival was but the feast of the Greeks and the Phoenicians in honor of Adonis, which literally meant add, A-D, the Lord on, the being, and is the fire, or one supreme fire being, or the sun. The confession of Eusebius that it required very little learning to see that the original Jesus Christ was a mythical Hindu god called Christos is a stinging reproach to the Christian clergy who have shut their eyes to that almost self-evident fact. And here Eusebius states a most important and significant historical fact, and that is that in his day there were documents extant that showed that Christos or Krishna was worshipped in the temple of Mathura on the Jumna in the days of Sanchoniathon, 1200 BC. We find the following concerning Mathura in Johnson's Universal Cyclopedia. Mathura, and we quote, Mathura, or Mutra, a town of British India in the northwestern provinces of Jumna, is a decaying and disagreeable place, but as the birthplace of Krishna, it is highly venerated by the Brahmins and visited by a great number of pilgrims. The shores of the river are provided with gorgeous flights of steps, and the city contains an immense temple from which, however, foreign conquerors have carried away the idols of gold and silver with eyes of diamonds. Sacred apes are kept here, They are fed at the public expense, and allowed to do what mischief they like. Swarms of holy parrots and peacocks are also maintained. As Mathura was the reputed birthplace of the Hindu myth Christos, it is more than likely his worship had its rise there, and the statement of the Spirit that Christos was worshipped there as early as the time of Sanchthoniathon, Sanchoniathon, the oldest of all known authors, 1200 BC, is confirmed by known facts. For anyone to pretend that the medium, an almost illiterate man, ever concocted that remarkable communication is preposterous, and yet there are people who are so prejudiced or lost to all reason as to make that pretense. Okay, that was Eusebius, Antiquity Unveiled, up to page 150.